Whenever you hear about one kind of thing being described in terms of another kind of thing, that's a metaphor. And the words to listen out for are it's like. So if you hear it's like, the next words will almost certainly be a metaphor. So if I say it's like the mind is like a rider on an elephant, the words it's like have flagged up the fact that a metaphor is the next thing coming. Now, if people have done some NLP training, there are various ways that they'll understand metaphor, particularly a story. But not many people realise that in ordinary English language, we use about 6 metaphors per minute. An astonishing number of metaphors in everyday English. And that's because the metaphors in our unconscious thoughts spill out in the words that our unconscious mind chooses for us to use. So, because word choice in our native language is an unconscious process, we know that it's the unconscious mind that's generating these metaphors. So, for example, in that last sentence, I said generating those metaphors. So it's as if I'm comparing the creation of words to some kind of electrical generator.
You had earlier used the term spill out. So there's another example of a vessel pouring or spilling or dumping somehow. That's good.
Mm-hmm. And of course, with these ones, you don't get that little flag of it's like. But if you stop and think about it, you know it's got to be a metaphor. There isn't really a container of language which is tipping bits of liquid on the floor. It's not literally spilling. It has to be a comparison, a metaphor. Mm-hmm. Metaphors are really influential at a very, very profound level. So if someone thinks of life as one long battle, so they're comparing their life as being like a battle in a war, or somebody else thinks, oh, life's like a fairground ride. There was a pop song recently that was, it's just a ride. Think about the different experiences that people would have if their life was a battle or if their life was like a fairground ride. It completely transforms the experience that people have. Now, the big piece, the new piece of the jigsaw, the piece which is really only just being understood by the academics in this kind of field. They tend to be called, the field tends to be called cognitive linguistics when it's academic. But it's the piece that David Grove realized in the very early 80s, which is that while a politician's or a teacher's or a speaker's metaphor can influence us and influences our unconscious minds at a very profound level, there's an even more influential kind of metaphor, and that's our own metaphor. So if we come up with our own metaphor for something, that will influence us and have more power in our unconscious thinking than any metaphor that comes in from the outside. Now, the trick to that is noticing those metaphors and learning how those own metaphors are different from the ones that the politicians and the teachers and so forth are bringing in from the outside. I'd like to suggest a few things that the listeners might do with what we've covered so far. Number one, start noticing the metaphors that people use and notice how it enhances your understanding of what's going on for them. Notice them first on the TV and radio, and then start noticing them in the people more immediately around you. Once you're comfortable with that, start asking the lazy Jedi questions about the metaphors you hear to find out those interesting differences in the details. Then, and here's the whole next level, start noticing your own metaphors and ask yourself those lazy Jedi questions about the metaphors you use. As I say, the easiest way to do that is to record yourself speaking for a few minutes about the subject you're thinking about and notice the metaphors.